Doing brakes on a 2017 Dodge Grand Caravan. We'll start off with the 12mm. Back to the caliper bolts. Get them both loose. Sorry about the traffic going by. Now this caliper is a turn-back caliper. You're going to need a special tool. I've got a couple special tool kits. If you don't want to buy or rent anything, here's this anything expensive. There's this cheap little turn-back tool. There's different slots in it. You're going to need one. So this caliper you can't really turn back. Traffic's crazy today. By pressing it back with a screwdriver, you just got to lift it right off of there. This one came off easy. The other side was rusted in there bad. This side, no problem. So that's pretty cool. Now we got an 18mm on the brackets in the back, bracket bolts. It's time to take those off. Got that one loose. And you got this little plate right here, this little dust cover plate. That's gonna make sure you put that back on. Takes a little force to get these loose. They should be in there tight. Make sure you put them back in tight. As long as these rotors aren't too rusty, they should hammer off easy. We're going to be replacing the rotors too. There's one. I like this side a lot better. The other side, for some reason, gathered a ton of rust. There we go. We bought the premium pads with new hardware. The hardware that the pads sit in. These are a little funky. You're gonna have 2 sets of 4 hardware. They have these little clips in them. The clips face outwards, the circular part. So make sure you put them in right. So we're gonna take these pads out. Looks like we're gonna have to hammer them out. Take those out, take the hardware out, and clean up all the rust in there. Put the new hardware on. I'm gonna clean it out with my Dremel tool or wire brush. This slide is frozen up. I have a video on taking off frozen slides. This one is just fine. It's sliding back and forth, but we're gonna clean that up and put some new grease in it. Use high temp silicone-based brake grease. So we're gonna clean these slides up. Clean the mounting bracket up where the hardware sits. Get the new hardware in. Set the new pads into place. The new pads kind of sit in a certain way, so it's easier if you get it all assembled with the brake pads on the bench instead of putting the mounting bracket on and then putting the pads in. So we're gonna do that. Hammer this off. There we go. We're not reusing this rotor, so I didn't care if I hit the friction surface or not. We're gonna put the new rotor on too, spray it down with some brake cleaner. Comes with some shipping oil, so you should always spray that shipping oil off. It's just like a light glaze to keep it from rusting. All right, let's get this mounting bracket prepped and this new rotor on. All right, we're all ready to roll. We got our caliper turnback tool in here. So you want to keep inward pressure on your caliper as it's spinning to the right, clockwise. There we go, it's backed all the way in. Grab this wrench. Now it should press in pretty easy. If you got to really jam on it, you got a restricted brake hose or caliper, you're going to want to bleed the brakes afterwards. course, after this brake job. Get some fresh fluid in there. This is the turn back tool. Comes with all different adapters. This pops into the grooves in the caliper. This keeps it tight against the caliper ears. And then you turn it. So it's going inward pressure and spinning the caliper. That's how you turn it back. So if you're using one of these tools, it's usually best to put the mounting bracket back on after you take the rotor off. Just put it on hand tight, put these screws in hand tight. That way you can get some inward force and turn. Put a little extender in these grooves. Turn it with your ratchet. Works good. We just used the professional tool this time. So it's all turned back. Good to go. We got our rotor prepped here. Just locks right on there pretty nicely. We got our mounting bracket with pads already set in. Hardware in the correct spots. The pads lock in. We'll get this guy started on here. The motorcycles are cruising today. So got her started. Don't forget your bottom one has this little cover. We gotta line that doohickey up. You want these nice and tight, nice and tight. So I was able to free up that slide pen. I didn't need to heat these ones up. I didn't have to bust the torch out. I just grabbed onto it with vice grips. I put it in my bench vise, the bracket. Started twisting back and forth and it broke free. And then with the vice grips, I was twisting and tapping it with a hammer and it came out, and we took these slides to the wire wheel, cleaned them up, put some grease in them. Cleaned up that mounting bracket where the hardware sits real nicely with my Dremel tool. Cool. You set that caliper in there and then press back on these sliders. Get the ear behind it of the caliper. Line up your screws. Sometimes the screws are hard to line up. You gotta finesse them. But these ones aren't too bad on this caliper. As you're tightening it, if these spin, you gotta put I think it's a 15/16 on them. They don't seem to be spinning on me at all. Make sure your e-brake's where it's supposed to be. It's not out of whack at all. There we go. Tighten them down good, but don't snap them off in there. I've seen people do that. There we go. We're reassembled. So we're gonna prime the brakes. Press that brake pedal in slowly to the floor about 5 times. Press it about 5 more times. Get the brakes set. And then give it a good bleeding. Get some fresh fluid all the way through. Take her out for a test drive. So there we go. Throw the tire back on. That was 19 millimeter on those lug nuts. I don't know if I said that. 12 millimeter on those, 18 on those. Make sure you got a turn back tool. Rent it or buy one of those cheap cubes. That'll work.